Hi folks, how you doing? It's James, JT at the movies, and welcome back to the channel. As promised, but a little bit delayed, as unfortunately seems to be the usual case around here since becoming a dad. Here is my ranking of the Mission Impossible films. I'd intended to do this last month when the Final Reckoning came out on Blu-ray, but unfortunately, life just gets in the way between my job and my little and my family, and just not having enough hours in the day, unfortunately. So if somebody wants to invent an extra hour or two in the day and somehow get that through without us having to go to work for it. That'd be absolutely fantastic. But anyway, I just wanted to sort of do a whistle stop ranking list and give some very brief thoughts on how I would rank the Mission Impossible series now that the series has come to a close with the release this year of The Final Reckoning. Now, is it really the end of this series, or could somebody wave a big check in front of Tom Cruise, or could somebody have a really great idea for a stunt and not know what film to put it in, and come to him with some mad idea, and we might get another one? You can never say never, but they seem to be sort of fairly content with that this has been the last one and that they just wrapped up this 30-year franchise, and that seems to be the consensus about. So now seems like the perfect time for me to talk about my rankings. I'm going to jump into the list, folks, but before I do, please remember it's just my list, my subjective opinion. I'd love to know your rankings down below in the comments and your reasons why. I always enjoy reading them and having a natter to you about them. I think it's brilliant that we've all got different opinions. And I've said this before about other film franchises. You could put 100 fans of a film franchise or a medium of art in a room and you'd get 100 different opinions. And I always find that really fascinating. So please do get involved in those comments down below. But without further ado, that list. In at number 8 for me is Mission Impossible 3 from 2006, if I remember rightly. Right from this film first coming out, I always just found it to be a little bit boring. And I always thought that it was a waste of such a good villain. Philip Seymour Hoffman's villain in this is truly menacing, and I really feel like it's one of the few times in the franchise where the stakes are actually against Ethan Hunt and he might stand a chance of losing. And I don't know, all the pieces are there. We're introduced to Benji, and you've got Lawrence Fishburne in there as well. And the stakes are higher because he's got married and he's trying to lead that civilian life and keeps getting called back to the game. And on paper, that sounds like the perfect sort of scenario for one of these films. But for me, it just didn't land. I remember watching it when it first came out on home video around, early 2007. I've watched it a handful of times whenever I run through the franchise since, and it's just never been a film that lands for me. And so when I was thinking about it, I was sort of like, is it dead last on the list? And for me, I think it is the one that I would sort of, you know, choose least to go back to, and I would never think to put this one on its own in isolation. So I think the only way I think I would watch this film again is when I decide, oh, I'm going to run through the Mission Impossible films over the next couple of weeks, so to speak. So for that reason, coming in at the last place is Mission Impossible 3. In at number 7, and might be a controversial pick, but we have the most recent effort for me, and that is Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. If you've seen my vlog where I talk about my recent pickups and talk about picking up the Blu-ray, you'll have heard some of the thoughts I have here, and I will be reiterating them. But for a film that's titled The Final Reckoning, there was nothing really about it to me, or my mate Lyndon either, that came with me when we went to watch it in the cinema, that felt very final. I also feel like they didn't earn anything in the plot, if that makes sense. There were some really great set pieces. There were some moments that should have been, really high stakes, like the bit swimming under the water to get to the submarine and retrieve the key and do all of that sort of stuff. And the throws back to the original Mission Impossible by bringing back the guy who was the CIA, the guard in the computer room from the first one, and seeing how his story played out, and all the little intertwining nods and winks. It should have felt bigger, and more grander than it landed for me, and it just again just didn't work. I thought, I got to the end of it, and both me and Lyndon were like, "Is that it?" And it just felt underwhelming, I think is the best way I can describe it. And I said this in my pickup video as well. I actually think that, and it's rare that I will say this about a lead character because I really don't like killing lead characters off, but I think that they should have had Ethan Hunt make the sacrifice play, and have to sacrifice himself to, to save humanity or whatever, and have it truly be the final reckoning. So in seventh place, that's where the final reckoning comes for me. So in at number six now, we have Mission Impossible 2 on my ranking list. And this is one that's just popcorn fun. It's really daft. It's really silly. It doesn't really hold up all that well when you compare it to the first one, and obviously, the later run of films, which, as you will have now guessed, make out the sort of the top end of my ranking list. But it's enjoyable. It is rewatchable. You can pop it on its own. The villain is a little bit lackluster with the Grey Scott, but you've got Anthony Hopkins in there. You've got Tandy Newton. You've got a really good sort of supporting cast. A relatively interesting sort of premise that's going on, and some great direction as well, really of its time, of the '90s, with what John Woo was doing, and really sort of stylized. But yeah, it works, and it's enjoyable. I just think that there are five other films in this franchise that are better than it. So in at number five, we have Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, originally Dead Reckoning Part One, and when I sort of first saw this in the cinema, my commentary, I went with some friends, and my commentary at the time was, and I think we all shared a similar sort of opinion, was that it very much felt like a part one movie, like it was building up to, an inevitable part two, a conclusion or whatever, and was kind of saving its A game for part two. That was my initial assessment, and then I rewatched it the night before I went to see Final Reckoning with Lyndon in the cinema, and had a much better time with it. And I don't know whether it's because my expectations were lower because I'd seen it and knew what to expect and knew what I was going into, but I had a much better time with it. I think of the sort of the duo that is the last two movies, because ultimately they were a part one and a part two. I think this is the stronger of the two of them. I enjoy the scenes at the end on the train. I think they're really good. I like the game of cat and mouse in the airport, and sort of switching the identities and stuff like that. I think there were some really fun moments in it. The car chase around Italy was great as well. Some really good classic Mission Impossible moments in this film, without it being, for me, one of the best. Coming in now at number four, we have Mission Impossible Fallout. I really enjoyed this film, and especially rewatching it through again recently, in the last 12 months or so. I think it was actually, yeah, in the sort of the run up and the anticipation to the last one coming out. I watched most of the recent ones sort of across the last 12 months, and and I enjoy this film. I just sort of felt like they'd done it better with Rogue Nation, which I'll talk about, in due course on this list. I felt like it didn't really add anything new to the dynamic sort of thing. The action was great. I really loved the finale in the mountains. I liked how it tied it back in to parts three and parts four, with bringing back his wife and having her be a sort of a central character in, and sort of understanding a bit more why he wants to be with her but he can't be with her. And again, I love the team play between obviously Benji and Luther, and obviously Ilsa as well, coming along for the ride in this one. Um, yeah, I just really enjoyed it. It's a really solid action film. Henry Cavill's great as the baddie in it. Sort of, you think he's the ally at the start, and then obviously as it goes on to reveal that he's not. He's one of the bad guys. And the scene where they're fighting in the bathroom, and he sort of cocks his arms. It's great stuff. He's brilliant in that, and that's the sort of film that he's made to be in. Is that, like I said, I just enjoyed three other films in this series a little bit more. So coming in at number three, we've got Rogue Nation. I was so hyped for this movie. This is the first time in this franchise that I was really hyped for a sequel, because obviously the first three came out and they were, sort of on the telly, or we'd get the DVD and stuff. So when I was growing up, but there was never really this sort of hype or energy around the Mission Impossible franchise. They were just movies that were made, and movies that I would watch with dad, and at home and whatever else. And so it was one of those things where I'd never been really hyped for it. But after Ghost Protocol, I was just absolutely hooked on the series, and so giddy to see where they went next, and didn't anticipate that they would make a sequel so quickly, given the long gaps and the stretches between the movies that had come previously. But I just remember absolutely loving this and bringing along the returning cast from the previous one, and the introduction of Ilsa into the fold as well was brilliant. My favourite stunt possibly in the whole franchise, and I'm sure it was simulated rather than actually done, but is the swimming through the tank to get to the core in the middle, and he's got to do it in so long or he'll drown. And I absolutely loved that. And I remember going with my mate Ed to the pictures to see it, and just having the best time with it. And so for me, that film is very much the third strongest entry in the franchise. So in at number two now is the original from 1996, the remake of the television series, the classic from Brian De Palma. I love this film. I think this holds up incredibly well. And it was nearly the top spot on the list. There is just the one film that pips it to the post, which no doubt you will have worked out now what that is, but we'll talk about it in due course. But the original one, I love the cast. I love that, they again, they take a risk with, the Jim Phelps character, a character that was obviously a staunch good guy in the original, and they do something a little bit different with him. And again, Tom Cruise is great in it. Ving Rhames is absolutely fantastic in it as well. And it's just got a really solid 90s cast. You don't know who to trust. You don't know, sort of where to look. And it's just superb. And then that finale on the Eurotunnel is just pure 90s action. I just absolutely love it. I could sit here and talk for hours about the first Mission Impossible film. Really, that so many pockets of brilliance in it. And obviously, I talked earlier in the video about the heist in the CIA where he breaks into the computer lab, and that it's just it's iconic, isn't it? Really, it is that imagery, and I think that's for good reason. Is because it's such a strong film. So finally, coming in at number one, my favourite Mission Impossible film is Ghost Protocol. Now, the only reason I went to the cinema to see this after having a sort of a mediocre experience on home media with the third one was because The Dark Knight Rises had released, rather than doing trailers before Mission Impossible, they released the first 15 minutes or whatever, the plane heist scene from The Dark Knight Rises, as like a promotional thing rather than trailers before it at select cinemas. So me and one of my oldest mates, Ross, went to the pictures to see it with purely the intent of watching the first 15, 20 minutes, whatever it was, of Dark Knight Rises. And we had no real sort of interest or intention of watching the rest of Mission Impossible. But we were there, we'd paid for it, and we sat, and it was the moment where obviously they broke him out of prison at the start, and that was fantastic. I love that too. Ain't that a kick in the head and choreographed and whatever else, fantastic. But it was the moment where they did the break into the Kremlin, and then ultimately the Kremlin ends up blowing up at the end of it, and the game of cat and mouse. I was like, oh wow, I'm hooked. Literally, the minute where it explodes and it cuts to black, I was like, yep, I'm here for this. And I just had the absolute best time with the film. And again, when it came out on, I had it on DVD originally. I've since upgraded to Blu-ray, but when it came out, it was a DVD that I put on regularly. And I remember being actually unwell and having to stay off work, which is a rarity for me. But I remember being sort of cuddled up in bed, sort of feeling really sorry for myself and watching that film and just having the best time with it. And it sort of mentally making me feel better, sort of, because it was just so high octane. And it's a film I've got a very special place for, and very much enjoy revisiting. So there we are, folks. That has been my ranking of the Mission Impossible movies. I hope you've enjoyed the video. It's been very unscripted, very off the cuff. I like to do things like that. I find if I try and script things, I sound really robotic, and so I just kind of wanted to talk from my experience, my feelings, and my thoughts, sort of thing. And hopefully, it's not been too rambly for you. If you've liked the video, please drop it a thumbs up. Leave me comments down below, as I said, with your own rankings and where we agree, where we maybe disagree. If there's anything that you think I need to take into account or reconsider the next time I watch these films, I'm always open to another perspective. In fact, I love to read and engage with them about them as well. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please think about subscribing. I've recently just passed 1,000 subscribers, and I really would like to keep it there and continue to grow the channel. It, of course, means the world to me whenever you guys hit subscribe. It means that we can get to know each other over future videos. But take care of yourselves, folks, and I look forward to seeing you again really soon for another video. Bye for now.